if there is any such thing as morality, Medicare for all fits squarely within that box. This idea that if you're a person, healthcare should be a universal right. Now, I make this point that morality is to some degree emergent. Healthcare can't be a universal right if everybody are just playing with sticks and rocks. But in a society where you have somewhat of a technological society that is affluent, yes, healthcare should be a universal right. Medicare for all doesn't necessarily, I guess, guarantee healthcare is a universal right, but it gets us in a significant way along the way, not to mention gutting the costs of healthcare and ensuring that everybody has healthcare, not access, make sure everyone has healthcare. The point of healthcare should be healthcare. These insurance companies that are predatory, you have cancer, pay me. These intermediaries that suck out a certain degree of profit that should be going into the healthcare apparatus itself. That needs to change. The Obamacare, this utopian idea that you can have these healthcare insurance companies still make magnificent profits while also lowering costs for the individuals in this process, has found itself to be somewhat nonsense as healthcare costs continue to go through the roof. When Hillary Clinton was getting elected, there were certain parts where healthcare was going up 50%. That's utter insanity. Healthcare was the #1 issue in this last election campaign. Immigration was #2, but healthcare was #1. And to some degree, it got that way to be the tip of the spear, in part because Trump made it an issue with the horrendous Trump care. B, because Sanders made it a tip of the spear. But also C, because of how expensive individuals and families find that it is to pay healthcare. You have a situation where their average wage or their wages hasn't gone anywhere while their costs have gone through the roof. Healthcare being one of those costs. It was the #1 thing that people wanted to deal with. Sanders has put out Medicare for all. I think he put this bill out in 2017. There's been a full-on real analysis of this by it's a group out of Massachusetts called, it's Perry, but I want to know what the acronym stands for. Political Economic Research Institute, a team of economists from the University of Massachusetts Political Economy Research Institute. Now, they did a real analysis of Bernie Sanders' bill, and what do you know? What do you know? When you get rid of the healthcare companies that are trying to scam, when you deal with the pharmaceutical costs, you can lower the cost of healthcare while ensuring that everybody gets high quality healthcare. What do you know? What do you know? Capitalism, even if you agree with it, shouldn't be in all areas, particularly exploitive areas. You have cancer, pay me. You have AIDS, pay me. You have some break, pay me. Oh, you can't afford to get all of your fingers sewn back on. Okay, well, choose the finger that you want to sew back on. You want your wedding ring finger? Okay, we'll sew your wedding ring finger on. But if you can't pay for the other one, sorry. We get this thing, oh, but there are going to be lines. There's going to be rationing. There's already rationing. If you can't afford to pay for it, you're not going to get it. Be it some people who just delay going to the doctor. You have a certain degree of people who avoid going to the doctor, avoid getting the prescription because they can't pay for it. This is a predatory healthcare system. We pay twice as much as everywhere else in the world. But it's not because Americans use healthcare more. It's because they are profiting off of the American healthcare system. And that needs to change from an economic standpoint, from a moral standpoint, even from a good standpoint of paying less to get more. It needs to change. This study backs up the argument that we can save $5 trillion within 10 years by switching to a Medicare for all plan. Isn't that amazing? Even businesses save on this plan. Because right now you have a situation where your business, if it's competing on a global market, if you're in a country in Europe, the healthcare is already covered. The businesses themselves aren't necessarily taking the brunt of the healthcare costs like they are in the United States. This system doesn't work. The system needs to change. And the only people who are benefiting off this system are the people who are preying on you, meaning the drug makers, the manufacturers in this case, doctors even, hospitals even, all will profit on this system the way it is. The American taxpayer, not so much. It's time to wake up. It's time to change our system and a way of doing things. Especially if you're saving money in this process, this becomes a no-brainer. In a 200-page report released at the Sanders Institute gathering, I'm going to be showing clips of that on the next show. The first major event hosted by think tank founded by Jane Sanders and David Driscoll, the senator's wife and son, economists, outlined seven major aspects of transforming the U.S. healthcare system, detailing step-by-step the actions needed to be taken to achieve truly universal healthcare and its potential impact on family, businesses, and the government. The analysis, which was developed for 18 months, has received praise from 11 distinguished experts in the field of economics and healthcare studies who have rigorously reviewed the research findings. The most fundamental goal of Medicare for All are to significantly improve healthcare outcomes for everyone living in the United States while establishing effective cost controls throughout the healthcare system. These two purposes are both achievable, says lead author Robin Poland, distinguished professor at economics at UMass Amherst and co-director of PERI. As of 2017, the United States was spending about $3.24 trillion on personal health care, about 17% of the total GDP. Meanwhile, 9% of the United States residents have no insurance and 26% are underinsured. They are unable to access needed care because of the prohibitively high costs. Other high-income countries spend average about 40% less per person and produce better health outcomes. Medicare for All could reduce the total healthcare spending in the United States by nearly 10% to $2.93 trillion, while creating stable access to good care for all of U.S. residents. This is what they want to do. They're very specific. Continuing, because, how do you pay for it? How do you pay for it? Here's how you pay for it. Continuing business healthcare premiums, but with a cut of 8% of relative to existing spending per worker. Businesses that have been providing health coverage for the employees will thereby see their healthcare costs fall by about 8 to 13%. Meaning if you're a business and if you're supplying healthcare for your workers, you'll see a cut in the amount that you have to pay for this. At a 3.75% sales tax on non-necessities, which includes exemptions for spending on necessities such as food and beverage consumed at home, housing, utilities, education, and nonprofits, the researchers include a 3.75% income tax credit for families currently insured by Medicaid, a net worth tax of 0.38% with an exemption for the first million in net worth. The researchers state that this tax would thereby apply only to the wealthiest 12% of U.S. households. Taxing long-term capital gains as ordinary income. They're showing you how you pay for this. Jake Tapper, with his practiced face, please don't raise my taxes, Jake Tapper, usually asks, how do you pay for it? Well, here's how. Under the recommendations, the researchers find that net costs of health care for middle-income families would fall by between 2.6 to 14% of income, meaning instead of your health care bill going up, it goes down. For high-income families, healthcare costs will rise, but only an average of 3.75% per income to those in the top 20% income group, and a 4.7% of income of the top 5%. The researchers also find that based on the 2017 U.S. healthcare expenditure figures, cumulative savings for the first decade operating under Medicare for All would be $5.1 trillion, equals to 2.1% of cumulative GDP without accounting for broader macroeconomic benefits such as increased productivity, greater income equality, and net job creation through lower operating costs for smaller and middle-sized businesses. Meaning they're able to do business better because they can do it for cheaper because healthcare has gone down. The amount that they spend on healthcare has gone down. Medicare for All will produce large cost savings for both businesses and households, says co-author Jeanette Wicks Lim, associate professor at PERI. Under our proposal, all businesses that now provide healthcare coverage for their employees will receive an across-the-board 8% cut in premiums. For families, our results show that Medicare for All will promote both lower average costs and greater equity. For example, middle-income families who now purchase private insurance on the individual market will see their healthcare costs fall by an average of 14% under Medicare for All. This study is the most comprehensive, detailed, authoritative study ever undertaken for Medicare for All, and it points powerfully and unassailably in support for Medicare for All, says economist and public policy expert Jeffrey Sachs, University professor at Columbia University, and reviewing the researchers' analysis. Medicare for All promises a system that is fairer, more efficient, vastly less expensive than America's bloated, monopolized, and overpriced and underperforming private health insurance system. America spends far more on health care and gets far less for its money than any other high-income country. This study explains why and shows how Medicare for All offers a proven and wholly workable way forward. I love this. I'm going to be showing clips from the Sanders Institute gathering, particularly one from Cornel West, because Cornel West gives an introduction to Sanders on this. And in the introduction to Sanders, he kind of brings up the election, but he does so in this kind of dog whistle way where he doesn't necessarily plow into it. If you remember, they were on opposite sides in that election. Cornel West was against supporting Hillary Clinton and ended up supporting the Green Party candidate. Sanders turned around and supported the person who cheated him. So it's interesting seeing these two together, but they are together. And Cornel West kind of brings up, you know, Sanders is not pure, but on the issues that we agree, we need to do and work vigorously on those issues. He brought up the Yemen war as being one of those issues, making the point that Sanders had put his bill to end that Yemen war before Khashoggi was killed. So I'm not going to keep this one long. I'll end this here. But Medicare for All, immensely, completely workable. Completely workable. All right, I'm going to end this here. $5.1 trillion in savings to Medicare for All. Good job on this paper. This paper, what, 18 months in the making, I think they said, as opposed to the other nonsense paper that came out. And even that paper found that people saved money in the plan. So, long story short, Medicare for All saves. And it's beneficial effects if you're part of the 90% of the population. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share. You can always help out through PayPal or Patreon. They demonetize these videos. It's almost random at this point. It's hard to know what video they're going to demonetize versus not. So if you want to help the content, please consider doing so, especially if you find yourself here often. So I'll end this here. Thanks all. I'll see you shortly. Bye-bye.